There are moments in life, of course, that can make us feel like we're standing on the edge of something pretty big. Getting married, new job, significant birthday, a graduation, a diagnosis, even a bereavement. Moments where the past is well and truly behind us, but the future is as yet uncertain. In one of the Bible books of the Old Testament, the book of Joshua, God's people are standing at such a moment. They've come through the wilderness, they've seen God act powerfully, but now Joshua, he's an old man nearing the end of his life. He gathers the people together for one final time. But he's no man's fool. He knows and understands human nature. He knows that people easily forget and drift between things, and that we hesitate very often to make commitments. So he calls the people together in a moment, in a time, in a space, to make a decision. And he says this to the people: if you decide that it's a bad thing to worship God, then choose a God you'd rather serve and do it today. Choose one of the gods your ancestors worshipped from the country beyond the river, or one of the gods of the Amorites on whose land you're now living. But as for me and my family, we will worship God. Dare I say, here on Easter Day 2026, we find ourselves standing on the edge of something pretty big, at another moment of decision. Because Easter isn't just a celebration. Easter, in every sense, is a crossroads. Now, if you've been following along in our Bible reading plan, where this year we're trying to read through the Old Testament, then this past week you'll have been in Joshua chapters 23 and 24, amongst others. And you may recall that Joshua begins chapter 4 not with a command, but with a reminder. He reminds the people of everything that God's been up to in their history. He talks about the calling of Abraham, the fact God delivered the people out of slavery in Egypt, bringing them through the wilderness, giving the promised land. In other words, Joshua's saying, look, you just need to stop a minute and look back on your life and see what God's been doing. Look at how he's acted. Look at his faithfulness to you. And that's important, isn't it? Because before we choose, we have to know. We have to see. That's exactly what Easter does. That's what baptism does. That's what Helen's story was all about this morning. It's what God's been doing in her life that's brought her to this very point today. And Easter, of course, tells the story of what God has done. That humanity went walkabout away from God. It ended up getting lost and pretty messed up. Consequently, the world became pretty broken and selfish. And the consequence of all of that was death. And so God stepped in his Son, Jesus, not to condemn us, not to berate us, not to hate us, but to rescue us. Save us. And Jesus goes to the cross not as a victim, but as a rescuer. He carries all the muck and the filth and the nonsense of our lives, what the Bible calls sin. He absorbs wickedness and evil. He faces death itself square on. And on the third day, that first Easter day, something happens that changes everything. The tomb is empty. And God wins. So the first thing we've got to do is remember. Remember what God has done. But in light of that, we've also got to make a decision. We have to remember that Easter is the moment of decision, of crossover. That's really important to see that, to think about that, to remember that. Back in Joshua 3, the people were quite literally standing on the edge of something big. It was called the Jordan River. In that moment, they had to make a bold decision to cross over. And in that moment, in that very moment, everything changed. It was a massive moment of transition in their history. In that moment, they moved from wandering to promise, from uncertainty to inheritance. And throughout the rest of the Bible, you can trace it through. That crossing becomes a hugely significant and important symbol of people moving from one reality to another, from one status to another, from one point of view to a very different perspective. So these people are standing on the edge of something really big. And we've heard that from Helen this morning, haven't we? We've heard that her life has radically changed because she came to a moment where she had to make a decision. She crossed over. And dare I say, we're all standing today on the edge of something big. Because this is Easter. And in Jesus' death and resurrection, humanity is invited to cross over from one reality to another, from one status to another, from one point of view to a very, very different perspective. To cross over from guilt to forgiveness. To cross over from fear to hope. To cross over from death to life. That's what Easter offers. Not just a better life, not just moral improvement, but a radically new reality, a new status, a new perspective. Because now, right now, in this moment, Easter Sunday 2026, you get to make a choice. And here's the important thing. Like Israel having to step into that river, you're invited to step into that new reality, that new status, that new life, but nobody's going to do it for you. And it brings us to a third thing to note here, because Joshua, as I said, knows people. He knows what they're like. The truth is, people don't just kind of drift aimlessly towards faith. I love the way Helen was saying. It was like God was poking her. Oi, oi! This way. People don't tend to drift towards faith. They drift away from it. And some of you here this morning may well be in that boat. If you're honest with yourself, maybe you can look back on your life and say, oh, there was a time when I did believe, but I've grown up now. I've experienced life. You're invited this morning to step back into that reality, that status, that life. To stop drifting. These are really important things because Joshua challenges the people to make a choice. Did you see it there in the passage? It's there again and again. If you decide. Nobody's doing this for you. You decide. If you decide it's a bad thing to worship God, choose a God you'd rather serve then. Okay, do it today. Do it today. Choose one of the gods your ancestors worshipped from the country beyond the river, or one of the gods your Amorites, the land they're now living. Okay, but as for me and my house, here's what we're going to do. We're going to worship God. We heard clearly this morning, Helen made a choice. No one did this to her. I am, with Tim, going to get her very, very wet. That's what we are going to do, right? That's what we'll do. But nobody has made her come to this point today. She hasn't been coerced. You hear some terrible stories, don't you, about cults and, different religions and doing this, that. No. This is her choice. And believe me, it's taken a lot of courage to make this choice, to choose. Notice Joshua didn't say to the people, well, think about it and get back to me. He didn't say keep your options open. He didn't say stay neutral. I mean, neutrality is just an illusion anyway, because people are always serving something, even if you're coming from a non-faith perspective. You're serving something. You're serving what? Success, comfort, approval, control. Then Joshua puts it plainly. Look, if you decide it's a bad thing to worship God, choose something else. In other words, just be honest. Don't play at this. And then he leads by example. Okay, well, as for me and my house, here's what we're going to do. We're going to worship God. It's not just a statement of belief, it's a declaration of direction, really. And Easter brings us to the same place. Because think about it. If this is not a load of nonsense today, if Jesus really did rise from the dead, then he's not just a clever guy. He's not just a good man. He's not just a teacher, a good one at that. If he really rose from the dead, if I'm right, and with the greatest respect, some of you are wrong, it changes everything. Because that means he is Lord. He is Lord. That's a thing to think about. That calls for a response. It calls for a courageous response. That's why Easter matters, especially if you're not perhaps sure what you believe. Some of you are here today. You have a very strong faith. God bless you. Others of you, you're unsure. You're curious. You're exploring this. You're checking out what on earth has she gotten herself into. Well, we're a bunch of weirdos, really, aren't we? Some of you may be here out of habit or because your family invited you. Some of you because, well, that's what we do on Easter Sunday. We go to church. And then we go back to Mum's to have a lovely lamb dinner. Lovely. And then in the afternoon we go for an Easter egg hunt. Yeah. Let's be honest. Let's be honest. Why doesn't Easter matter if you're just not sure about all of this? If you're still not convinced, even by listening to Helen's story, well, listen. Easter answers the deepest questions we all carry. We worry and think about things like, is there life beyond the grave? Is there more than this? We live in a world where death seems incredibly final, but Easter says, it's not the end. We ask ourselves, a lot of us, what about this guilt I'm carrying? If people knew the truth about me, I could never be forgiven. We all carry things we wish we could undo. We'd love a reset button, wouldn't we? Easter says, you got it. You can be forgiven. Some of us are wondering, what the hell am I doing here? What's the point of this? What is the meaning to my existence? You want more than just survival? Easter says, you can be known. You can be loved. Some of us question, God. I mean, this God thing, is he real? And if he is real, where the blinking heck is he? Because he's far away. Easter says, no. He's real, and he's come close. He's come in Jesus. Now, please don't misunderstand me. You don't have to have everything figured out today, but Easter invites you, choose. What if this is true? What if this stuff and nonsense we celebrate here every week at Moriah is true? What do you do? It's interesting, you go back to the passage with Joshua, he doesn't just say to these people, guys, choose God. He goes further, actually. He says, get rid of your other gods. Look at it. You see it there? Get rid of them. Throw away the gods your ancestors served. That might sound very ancient, like something you do back in Bible times, but today, you don't have idols, don't you? I think it speaks right into our day and age. Idols today may not look like statues, but they do look like careers, or image, or relationships, or money, or control, or self-reliance. An idol is anything we depend on more than God. Anything we trust to give us that identity we crave, that security, that significance we want. But here's the problem, as we've all found out, those things can't carry the weight of hope we put on them. Because careers change. Relationships sometimes fail. The stock market goes down as well as up. So many of these things promise a lot, but often we end up feeling empty. Easter blows all of that to smithereens. It shows us what real love is actually like. It's not about taking, it's about giving. It's not about control, it's about surrendering. It's not about trying to save ourselves, it's actually about being saved. So it gently asks us today, what are you trusting in? Heard from Helen. What are you really trusting in? Challenges us to put down those other things we're looking to help us. You know, one of the strongest themes in Joshua is the amazing promise God makes. I'll be with you. I'll never forsake you. And that promise carries right through to Easter. Because when Jesus rose from the dead, that first Easter morning, he didn't just prove something, he became present with his people. And that's the key thing, you see. The resurrection for Christians isn't just an event, it's a relationship. The resurrection says God's not distant, God's not absent, God's not indifferent. It says God is with us. And you know what? Not just here, but when you go to work, and when you go to the shops, and when you go shopping, and when you go to work, and you're with your boss, and you're sitting down, and you're thinking about the future, and you're making your plans. He's there even in grief and in doubt and in failure. He's there in the ordinary and the mundane stuff of life. There are times, I know, when we don't feel that. But Easter tells us God's presence isn't based on our feelings. It's based on his faithfulness. Okay, let me pull all of this together. Where are we going with all of this? Joshua understood the human psyche. It's not enough, you see, actually just to remember. You know, Helen looked back on her life and could see different things that happened, and okay, that's fine, but it's not enough to just remember. You've got to respond. It's pointless Tim and me meeting with Helen and just talking about, oh, right, that happened in your past, did it? Oh, lovely. Oh, you feel that God was tapping you on the shoulder and pointing you in this new direction. That's nice. The challenge was to respond to that. So after the people turn around to Joshua and say, well, okay, then we'll serve the Lord. Joshua challenged them. He says, are you? Are you really? See, he knew words are easy. That's why you're going to get wet. Commitment costs. It does. Easter demands way more from us than just our admiration for Jesus. Oh, cool guy. It invites our participation. Not just, oh, that's a nice story, but will you follow me? Not just, oh yeah, I believe in God, but will you trust me with all your life? Joshua says, look, as for me and my family, see, faith isn't just for sacred moments. It's for your home, it's for the workplace, it's for your relationships, it's for your decisions. It shapes how you live, not just how you believe. It's not just something you do on a Sunday for an hour or so when you come to chapel. It's about every place, every time. The resurrection isn't just about what happens after we die. It's about how we live today. With hope, instead of despair. You look at the world in which we live, the senselessness that's going on in the Middle East, or in Russia and Ukraine. You pull your hair out thinking about all these things, but we can live with hope instead of despair. With grace instead of bitterness. Some of our families torn apart with bitterness. We need some grace. Courage. instead of fear. Because if death is not the end, then fear doesn't have the final word. So where does that leave us today? Joshua gave a clear invitation. Choose. Choose. Easter gives us the same invitation. Okay, choose. No pressure, no coercion, an open door. For some of you here this morning, or joining us online, the next step might be saying, okay, I want to know more. I want to begin to explore faith honestly. I want to ask those questions I've got. Join an Alpha course. That's what Helen did. Many people here have been baptized and came on an Alpha course. You can ask those honest questions. For others, it might be returning after drifting. It might be letting go of something that has taken God's place. It might be recommitting your life. It might even be being baptized. And for some of you, it might be the first time just saying, do you know what? I've looked back. I know enough. I choose to trust Jesus. I'll just finish with this. At the end of Joshua's speech, he sets up a stone as a witness, a reminder, because he knows our forgettery is far better than our memory. You find that? Oh. Easter's a wonderful reminder. God keeps his promises. That's what it reminds us. It reminds us death is not the end. It reminds us love is stronger than sin. It reminds us life is being offered to you and to me. So today we stand at the moment of decision. Not forced, but invited. The words of Joshua still echo. Choose this day whom you'll serve. Choose. And the risen Jesus says, I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me will live.